I am very pleased and happy to be able to introduce to you people who probably don't need much introduction, but are involved in the work of a nonprofit called Welcome Neighbor. Laura Frank is a relatively new employee of Welcome Neighbor, and Karen Wynn, and both of these women sing in our choir, but Karen Wynn is a member of the board. So they're going to share a little bit with you about what this organization is doing to work with and to welcome refugees into the St. Louis communities. Thank you all.
Thank you, David. So yes, a big thank you for allowing us this time to share the Welcome Neighbor story. So I'm Laura Frank. I know most of you, but there's a few 8 o'clock folks that I don't. So I know 10:30 people because I sing in the choir, as does Karen. But I'm a member here. I'm on the vestry. My husband, Don, is in the back. We've been members of St. Peter's for about 17 years. I started here for the music and for the choir and very quickly fell in love with everything here and became confirmed in the Episcopal Church, left the Presbyterian Church. So this is my happy home. So I went yesterday. Karen and I were at what was the very first board and staff retreat for Welcome Neighbor St. Louis. And they started the day, there was a quote on a slideshow just like this. And the quote was, "Bite off more than you can chew, and then chew it." And I just thought, these are my people, because that has basically been the theme of my life. Bite off more than you can chew, and then chew it and figure out how to do it all. So I am very grateful for this time because I just started this job the 1st of December. So I'm going to be giving presentations like this. So this is my safe space near my church home. Thank you for going easy on me as I work through this presentation for the first time. I am going to start with, we have this slideshow which goes through the programs and tells you specifically what Welcome Neighbor does for refugees in St. Louis. And then I'm going to move backwards a little bit and show you how Welcome Neighbor came to be, because it's really a fascinating story. And then we're going to talk about the future of Welcome Neighbor, because the organization is changing so quickly and so dramatically. So Welcome Neighbor.
Are you pressing down?
Yes. Here we go. So Welcome Neighbor was started as an organization to support and build community for refugee populations in St. Louis. So we currently support, and this number is actually outdated. It says 600 refugees. I think it's closer to 700. It says from 11 different countries. In reality, 85% of these families are from Syria and Afghanistan. So yes, in total, there's been more countries than that, but the bulk of the community have come to the United States from Syria and Afghanistan. So the central piece of Welcome Neighbor is what's called family partnering. And that is a program where volunteers are matched with immigrant and refugee families in St. Louis. And they are friends and a support system for refugees. If you could imagine, you know, I'm a mom of 3 children. When I get the school forms for my kids, you know, as school is getting ready to start every year, my head spins. When I'm trying to decipher health insurance forms and claims, my head spins. And I am from this country, this is my primary language, and I have experienced no significant trauma in my life. So, for vulnerable populations, these family partners are critical in their success here. I'm actually going to I'm going to introduce and turn the table for a second over to Karen. So Karen is, as David said, she's also a member of the choir. We did not know that either of us were associated with Welcome Neighbor until a couple weeks ago. And then we made the connection. So, but Karen started her journey with Welcome Neighbor as a family partner. So I'm going to let her take over.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you a little bit how I got involved as a family partner. I retired 3 years ago, and by the way, I am a member of the choir. I've only been going here regularly for a year and a half or so, and hello to those of you who I haven't met. It's delightful to meet you, but anyway, I am a lifelong Episcopalian. So I retired about 3 years ago, and my last job was as a Social Security disability judge. And that job means you read medical records all the time, and you get very familiar with a lot of medical conditions and terms. You also get familiar with the hospitals, the clinics, the doctors, especially those who treat the underserved, because as you can imagine, that is largely, but not totally, the population who's applying for disability. So I got very interested in seeing, just in reading this, there was this thread of how people sometimes would go months and years trying to get adequate medical care to address, sometimes burning medical issues, sometimes very, very serious medical issues. And sometimes people got, they fell through the cracks, they didn't understand what they were told. They had a hard time getting anybody to advocate, like, this person really does need an MRI, And I thought, I could do something like this, even if I'm not a trained healthcare person. I just thought I was a doctor back then, and I kind of still do, but Anyway, so when I retired, I decided that would be a good niche for my skills, and I called around and I called several of the low-income clinics like Affinia, Casa de Salud. I called legal services and just said, is there any need for something like this? And I didn't get much reception, although, sometimes people would say, wow, you really have a great resume. Let us think about it. But no, there really wasn't, because I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a nurse. I'm not a healthcare professional. So that was a little frustrating. But at the same time, I always had this soft spot in my heart for the refugees. There would be refugees who'd come to apply for disability. Some of them were really tear-jerking stories. I can remember a man in my courtroom who was, he was an Iraqi soldier, and he'd worked with the American Army. And he had a true case of PTSD. I mean, you hear about PTSD all the time. We overuse the term all the time, I got PTSD from that, night I was out there, or whatever. He had real PTSD. He shook like a leaf. He kept asking me if I was with the American Army, and I'd say, no, but you're safe here. And, so I thought, these are people who really need some assistance too. And whenever I had a refugee in there, I'd say, I'm glad you're in this country. Welcome to this country. And I really developed an interest and kind of sympathy for that population as well. Anyway, so I had been to one of the Welcome Neighbor dinners, which we'll talk about more, and I knew about its work, and I knew that they had this program called the Family Partnering Program. And so I ended up volunteering for the Family Partnering Program. And I became a family partner to a very large extended family. There's now 14 of them living in one house, but that's what they like to do. They want to live together. They're Afghans, and that has been a source of great joy and interest to me. I feel like I could write a novel if only I had novelistic gifts. But it's really fascinating, and these people have really become my friends. They call me sister, they call me auntie. They are truly my friends. But in the course of doing this, I also realized what a huge need there was for people to take people to doctor's appointments. And that's a lot of what I do now. My joke is that my retirement gig is I am a medical chauffeur. I take people to doctor's appointments and dental appointments, and I sit with them, and they are scared. A lot of them speak no English at all. Some of them I can communicate with through Google Translate, but some of them don't read either. And so I have learned to become a pretty good communicator through, lunch, that kind of thing, and talking to people. But these ladies, and a lot of these people are ladies and their children, right? They typically don't drive, they don't speak English, but boy, does it help them just to have another person, and particularly a woman for the ladies, with them going into the doctor's office. They want me to come in to the doctor, and sometimes I can help explain things to them in a way that the doctor can't, even though the doctor has an interpreter on the phone often. Like the doctor will go through this medical terminology, and then I'll finally say things like, so the old problem is solved, but now you have a new problem. And the new problem is, and I'll just make it as simple as can be, and then that helps for them. So I feel like I'm adding another layer of interpretation there. But I hold their hands, I hang out with them, I drive them, I entertain their children. The children are almost always delightful to be with. And it's just, I really feel like this is the mission I've found, or one of the missions I've found, and it's really gratifying. And I'll talk more maybe later about the Family Partner Program, because that's something I would urge people here to consider getting involved in. There are many churches have teams who become family partners and are just invaluable resources to the Welcome Neighbor population that we serve.
That was awesome. Thank you. So family, just to segue back into the programs that we offer, family partnering is, I keep on going the wrong direction. Family partnering, and as Karen described, it's everything from, helping with rides to organizing social events. And we get a lot of tickets donated, which is wonderful. You'll see here it says the goal of the program is self-sufficiency, and that's really key to the program. We are trying to welcome refugees into the community, but set them up for success and ultimately a life of independence. So everything that we do is with an eye toward, we can't provide these services forever. How can we get you the job training, language training, et cetera, so that you can be successfully launched? We have a woman on staff who has created a curriculum, an ESL curriculum, and this is both for the adults and children in the families. We have a mother's support group. What the founders of the organization observed very early on is that the health and well-being of the mothers is totally central to the health and well-being, and ultimately the acclimation of the entire family. So if the mother is feeling stable and confident and supported, the rest of the family does too, and the better their ability to thrive. So our volunteers help with the mom support group. They often help just with childcare for the kids while the women gather on Fridays to talk. We have a social worker on staff who speaks a number of languages. So this is one of the other programs, and one other way to help is through childcare and rides to these Friday programs. So many people, when I started working for the organization, this is really the program that people seem to know the most about. So many people have said to me, "Oh my gosh, the supper club! I've seen that online, or my friend posted about that on Facebook. So the supper clubs are a way to raise money for the refugee women. Many of them have really amazing cooking skills. So these supper clubs, anyone can host. We as a church could host a supper club and sell tickets for it. We could sell 100 tickets. The refugee women would come into our church and they would cook a meal and they would serve it to us. And that is a fundraiser, not for our organization, but it's a way of creating income flow for the refugee women and for their families. And bless you. And it's the other opportunity that is woven into the supper club for the refugees. Each woman is trained through our ESL program director to tell her story. So to tell her story about coming to the United States. So she has to stand up in front of a group like this, oftentimes bigger, and tell her story about where she came from, why she's here. And that is just a huge, confidence builder. Again, job training, learning to present yourself, getting more comfortable with language. So there's a lot of wonderful lessons looped into these supper clubs. During COVID, these during COVID, these supper clubs morphed into, do I have a slide on that? I don't think so. These morphed into I wasn't with the organization at the time, but they started doing drive-through meals so people could come, order meals in advance, and then, take the meal with them. So the organization was still able to provide this opportunity even during COVID. So as you can see, just about $600,000 raised in supper clubs. And over 21,000 people in St. Louis have attended one of these supper clubs, which is so, so cool. So that's a lot of people's introduction to Welcome Neighbor. Oh, here's the drive-through supper club. This was a COVID thing. This still lasts a bit, to my knowledge, but it's dwindling as people can gather now together. We also offer cooking classes. So if you have an interest in learning more about Syrian food, one of the great benefits of working for Welcome Neighbor is you are constantly served amazing food. Yesterday at our meeting, there hummus, these pastries, gorgeous, delicious pastries, rolled grape leaves. It's all this wonderful food. So there's also an opportunity to attend a cooking class. One of the ways that the refugees who are part of our program give back to St. Louis is once a week. It started as every other week, and we're now raising funds to be able to do it once a week. They cook a meal and bring it to shelters in St. Louis. So currently it's the Peter and Paul, and then also St. Patrick's Center. So this is a way for our refugee families who have had the benefit of services from us and from St. Louis welcoming them. This is a way for them to give back to St. Louis. As the programs have grown, it was very clear that transportation was such a big issue. So there's now a program in place which services and restores used cars for use. So if you ever have a car that you want to donate, we will happily take that off of your hands. We also have a lot of volunteers that offer just to be drivers, people who don't have enough time to commit to a family partnering. They'll just drive. And I would be the person coordinating all of that for you. And then this is a program that matches teens. There's a lot of service requirements around St. Louis, and we have a woman that runs this START program. So she works with groups of children who do things like building beds, putting together furniture for families that are newly settling. Okay, So that is a snapshot of where Welcome Neighbor currently is and the types of programs that we offer refugees. I'm going to move backwards a little bit and tell you how it was founded, because I think it's just a really powerful story, and a really powerful story for us at St. Peter's, as we are always looking for outreach opportunities. Connor, could you help me switch? So it's this.
This one here?
Yeah, okay. Awesome, thank you. So this gets back to our theme of, where did it go? So this loops back to the theme of bite off more than you can chew and then chew it. And then for people of faith, my favorite Martin Luther King quote, which is, faith is taking the first step, even if you can't see the whole staircase. So this is how Welcome Neighbor started. In 2016, that is not right. So in 2016, there were a series of stories in the Post-Dispatch about some hate crimes that were happening in a couple areas in St. Louis where some Afghan families had settled. And some people were going into the community and committing violence and stealing things. It was pretty bad. So our founder, and actually our founding board member, this is how they met. They both read these stories in the paper, and they just started going to those neighborhoods. They were so appalled by what they had read, and they just sort of showed up and said, how can I help? What can I do? And as they started meeting people, they didn't speak the language, but again, they just relied on, you know, the power of human connection and being able to communicate through facial expressions and body language. They started bringing blankets, they started bringing food, and that is how Welcome Neighbor was born. So the next step, they started organizing drives to get household items and goods for the families. And these are, you know, several pictures. So as the word started spreading, St. Louisans kept asking, what else can we do? What else can we do? And I would say this has been quite remarkably one of the most unusual things that I have observed in my short time with the organization. We have hundreds of volunteers, and I am the volunteer coordinator. People are contacting me every day, begging, what more can I do? What more can I do? So I am used to being in the opposite situation where I've worked for organizations where we're hand-wringing. We need help, we need help. Can you please do this? Can you please do that? We are in the opposite situation where people are so desperate to help. That's why I got hired, because they can't keep up with all of these requests and all of these needs. So we have at this point well over 300 very active volunteers. There's more volunteers that that have helped us and that are sort of interested in helping again in the future. So as my boss said, I'm like the flight controller, just bringing everybody in, matching them with families, matching them with the needs, and sending them out to do good. But I think that's quite possibly one of the most exciting thing about this organization is it's really harnessing people's natural goodness and wanting to help vulnerable people. I think the world can be overwhelming with, you see so many things that are disheartening and discouraging, and this is provided me personally, and for a lot of people, it's this bright light. It's an opportunity to help truly very vulnerable people. So they started organizing these social gatherings, these picnics, And that is really how the Supper Club was founded. I met a board member, her name is Mauda, and she's from Afghanistan, and she's so wonderful. And she told me the story of how the Supper Club was born. Our founder, Jessica, had been going into neighborhoods and just finding ways to help. And Mauda was one of the people, Mauda and her family, that Jessica had helped. And Mauda said, you know, Jessica, I want to have you come over for dinner. I just want to thank you for everything that you've done for us. So Jessica went over for dinner, and Mauda prepared a meal. And the food was incredible. And Jessica said, oh my gosh, like, you need to do something with your cooking skills. And Mauda said, I don't know, I mean, where would I even begin? How would I get started? And Jessica said, I will be back here in 1 week with 20 people. If you can cook a meal for 20 people, I'm gonna sell tickets, and you feed the people, and I'll give you that money. I'll donate the food, I'll give you the money. And so that is the birth of the Supper Club. And now it's grown into, as you saw, you know, serving over 200,000 people in St. Louis have participated in the Supper Club. I keep on going the wrong direction.
And by the way, these families that were initially encountered by the founding volunteers, they were living in the Hodiamont area, and they were experiencing a lot of re-trauma from violence and just feeling unsafe in their neighborhood and threats against them. And many of them now start out in South St. Louis City, and their great goal is to move to South County, where there's a large immigrant population in South County, as many of you probably know. And unfortunately, a lot of that is schools that are, you know, driving them towards South County and away from the city, which makes me really sad, because it would be such a great way to revitalize the city if people would stay there, but they typically do not want to stay in the city.
So that's a good point that you raised, Karen. So St. Louis has actually been, you know, as you've read in the papers, and many of you know more about this than I do, but you know, we're trying to attract populations to more people into the city of St. Louis, because the population is declining, and nothing good happens when the population and the businesses are declining. So this is a real opportunity to build healthy and thriving communities in the city, which, you know, benefits St. Louis as a whole. So we are running out of time. What I'm going to do is segue into, this is a snapshot of what the organization does. So as you can see, it's an organization of big dreamers, and like the ultimate dream of the board and the founders was to become actually a resettlement organization. So to move from an organization that provides services for refugees to actually be an organization that receives and fully resettles refugee families. So in the Department of Be Careful What You Wish For, this has happened, and we are receiving our first 2 families, quite literally receiving them off the plane this Friday, so 5 days from now. Yeah, and they're coming in, yes, it's exciting. So they're coming in from Syria, and we are actually getting a 3rd Syrian family February or March. And this is in partnership through the International Rescue Committee that works with the government. The government ultimately decides how many refugees can be brought into the United States, and then that number is fanned out to all the different states or cities that can actually receive refugees. Obviously, they're not taking refugees in Texas or other places, but St. Louis is considered a really a good place for refugees to settle.
I was just going to say, most of you have heard of the International Institute.
You can speak in here.
Sorry. Most of you have heard of the International Institute. It's the primary resettlement agency in the St. Louis area. And Welcome Neighbor used to not be in the resettlement business, International Institute helps people typically for 90 days. That's what the federal resettlement funds allow for. At the end of that 90 days, as you can imagine, people who don't speak much English still need a lot of help, and that used to be sort of where Welcome Neighbor would really take over. Now, Welcome Neighbor is going to do both. We will help them from the very beginning through the quote 90-day resettlement process, which is basically getting enrolled for benefits, finding a place to live, and helping someone maybe get a driver's license and find a job. But we will then, continue that. So it will be another agency like the International Institute, although not on that scale probably, for resettlement as well. Just so that you understand the roles of the two organizations.
No, that's super helpful. So this is where, so these two families, or these three families ultimately that are coming to St. Louis, this is why I'm here today. In my naive capacity, 1 week into the job, I called David Hodges and said, look, Christmas is coming. I know we designate the Christmas offering for organizations that are not part of like our immediate outreach efforts at St. Peter's. So I said, would you consider Welcome Neighbor? And at that point, he had already made a designation for the Christmas offering, but said, sure, come speak in January, and we'll designate the offering at that time, and you can spread the word about Welcome Neighbor. So that is how I ended up here. So we have a couple different fundraisers for these families that are coming in. We are required, again, if you could see this, it's a pages-long Excel spreadsheet from the International Rescue Committee that outlines exactly what we have to do for each family. Provide a cell phone, provide $300 for each individual for spending money. There's very specific housing requirements in terms of square footage, the number of people per room. So we're in very, very good shape, but so you are aware for today for the offering that comes from St. Peter's will help fill in some of those gaps, like, toiletries and welcome kits for the family. We try to provide, we have a Syrian woman on staff who knows the types of foods and the types of groceries they would want to have in the house. So she's going to get the apartments prepared for them. So anything that comes in from St. Peter's will help to fill in that gap, as well as we have a housing fund to help pay for the rent for these families for the first 6 months before, hopefully at that point they will be achieving independence. So that was a lot of information. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your patience as I'm still learning. Karen and I both have to go rehearse music. We can take a couple questions, but
Can I just give a
Yeah.
pitch for the family partner?
oh yes,
Yeah. So I'm a family partner, and it can be, let me just say, it can be a lot of work, and sometimes there are weeks when I really work hard on this. It is also incredibly joyful. I have really, truly become friends with these people. I have no grandchildren. There's a passel of children in this family. I take them and do things with them. One of the most joyful moments probably of my recent life has been when I took them swimming for the first, they had never been swimming in they didn't know how to swim. They had never been in a swimming pool. And I took them swimming. My neighbor has a pool. And I have never seen such joy, and it was infectious. And I get to take them to do fun things. There's Boo at the zoo, or take them to parks or whatever. So that can be really, really fun. There's some parts that aren't so fun, of course. But it is really, every time I go over there, it's sister and auntie and Karen, and we're so glad you're here, and here's some tea, or here's some lunch, or here's some whatever. And it is a really gratifying and interesting set of relationships to develop. I would like to encourage this church to think about forming a family partner team, because despite what Laura said about volunteers, and there are a lot of volunteers, but there's always a need for family partners, and it's best done as a team, like 5 or 6 people. That way, you know, if somebody can't do something, there's a crisis. Oh my gosh, the bus didn't come. How do we get the kids to school? Then somebody can step in. Anyway, it's a really, really gratifying experience, and I would urge people who are interested to think about that experience and talk to like-minded folks. And it would be great to have a family partner team from this church. So, anyway.
And dinners.
Oh,
Dinners, yeah.
absolutely. The dinners are fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the two things that are totally central to Welcome Neighbor are actually totally central to St. Peter's Church. Welcoming, I think we do welcoming very well, and hospitality at St. Peter's, and food. So those are two very common threads in both organizations. So are there any quick questions before we sing? Thank you for your listening. Yes.
What percentage of the refugees you serve are men?
I don't
Do you
know
have
the
any
answer to that.
programs? Do you have any programs?
Do you know? I mean, I know these two families that are coming. They're both single moms. One is a 6-person family, so it's 4 children and a single mom. And then the other family is 3 children and a single mom. There are men, I just don't know.
I don't know what percentage, but I would say the vast majority of the people who come are in families. So there is, you know, there's a lot of men who are in adolescent boys. For example, just to give you an example, my big family, there's an older man, he's not very old, who I call the patriarch, and he has 2 adult sons with him. They're both married, and a passel of children and a wife, but one of the sons has 3 kids. So in this family, there are 3 adult men who are working. So they're doing okay. And the women are trying to gear up for at least some part-time work, but, you know, there are lots of babies. So there's a lot. And then there are a few single men. There are a few single men who get here, and they often know somebody, have a cousin or an old friend or somebody, but they need a lot of service too. But most of the people who come over are in families. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, one of the families that is coming on Friday, the oldest son is 18. So, you know, we are required to get them on an employment track very quickly after they arrive. So part of those initial meetings with the family and with the translator is going to be figuring out who is going to be the breadwinner here, who's going to be the primary worker. Is it going to be the 18-year-old son, or is it going to be the mom? So, yeah. Yes. I'm sorry. Well, I'll get to both of you, but whoever wants to go first, yeah.
Mine is to confirm, is today collection to help support? My question is today's collection at church to help support?
Correct.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm done.
Of the families who come, are a lot of them fatherless?
Some of them are. It's really a mix of women coming in with children, some single men, as Karen was mentioning, and then some full families. So yes.
So Laura, if anyone is interested in participating or volunteering in any way, are you the person?
Yes, and I should have put an extra slide with my contact information. I apologize that I didn't do that. And Welcome Neighbor's website is, welcomeneighborstl.org. Of course, there's buttons all over the place that say donate. There's also a program link. But in terms of volunteering time, donating money, I can help you with any of that. My email address at Welcome Neighbor is volunteer@wnstl.org, welcomeneighborstl.org, volunteer. So you don't even have to know my name, just hey, you. So I am happy to help and connect you and tell you more. So thank you again for allowing us to do this.
And thank you for making this very nice presentation.